Welcome back, guys, to the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Richie, back with my guy, Zappy. And, man, what a ball game tonight. Subway Series Round 3. Yankees got their first punch in. 4-2 victory over the New York Mets. Game ended roughly about 10 minutes ago. Really had that playoff atmosphere. My sister from Jersey is actually at the game. Game ended roughly atmosphere. My sister from Jersey. Get a little feedback?
Yeah, that was really weird. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, no, because it's not there now, so let's just keep rolling.
Right.
Yeah, my sister Nicole out in Jersey actually went to the game. She had a really good time. I'm glad they won, that she was in the house. But instant reaction, we both saw the game. You said you were watching the ball game with your kid. What were your thoughts on the pitching matchup between Hermione and Max Scherzer? I thought that was really key for both teams to have.
I mean, I thought it was a bigger win for Hermione than it was a loss for Scherzer, without question. I mean, when you think of Scherzer, you think of one of the top aces in Major League Baseball, and the way the Yankees came out and got on top early and didn't look back. You know, they had him well into his 70th pitch by the 6th inning, I believe it was. Meanwhile, Hermione, his first 5 innings of pitching was 9 pitches, 8 pitches, 10 pitches, 11 pitches, you know.
He didn't reach 11 pitches or 10 or more until the 5th inning, which was really excellent.
And then, and it was McCann. I mean, McCann got a baker's dozen on him, you know, foul ball after foul ball, and finally got on. And then you could kind of see that the fatigue was starting to kick in at that point. But, you know, even then, the bullpen, I thought they pulled it out. They came through. They won a game they needed to win without their power hitting. They needed to win a dirty game like this, and they've done it now 2 games in a row. So, I mean, I thought it was an excellent game for the Yankees, a very important win for the Yankees, because it wasn't just back-to-back wins against a bunch of nobodies, you know, a win against the Blue Jays, in which they did lose the series, but they closed out the series with a win and carried it over with a win today against the Mets. So, I mean, I thought it was a very important win.
Character-defining win for sure, because I said this not too long ago that when the Mets beat up on the Yankees in Queens, I actually believe that psychologically it did something to the Yanks. I think this was a must-have game, and they got the timely hits, you know, 2-out hitting. Aaron Judge, who I believe was like 5 for his previous 34, 2 big hits tonight, 1 a home run off of the future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. And to your point, Scherzer's pitch count was high, where Domingo Germán was really just coasting. By the way, my mother dropping a quick comment here. Good evening, gents. Yanks won. And yeah, she was excited. She was kind of nervous. My sister sent us like a photobomb of a ton of pictures at the stadium. Feel good win, man, and one that they needed. And the Yankees are catching a break tomorrow with no Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, you know, when I saw the news about that, I thought to myself, okay, you know, better chances that the Yankees can split the series now. I honestly thought Max Scherzer was going to come out tonight. I thought the Mets were going to come out and take tonight. But the fact that the Yanks came out, now we're talking about the possibility of a sweep.
Yeah.
I believe you guys do have Frankie Montas coming up to pitch tomorrow, which since the trade, he has not been there. Hopefully he can get off the slump, because you look over in St. Louis and see what Jordan Montgomery's doing out there right now. And, you know, it's kind of like, you tell me we traded him for Frankie, but he's killing it over there in St. Louis now, you know? So,
well, they technically didn't trade him for Frankie.
You didn't trade him for Frankie. Yeah,
but
the
point is, you know, the rotation switches. They traded him for Bader, who's still yet to play. Exactly. He should be joining the team, I would think, the second week of September. But if I was the Yankees, I would actually not pitch Montes tomorrow, and I would save him for the Oakland series, because we're playing, if I'm not mistaken, it's either the Angels in Oakland or Oakland and the Angels. I'm not 100% sure which order that is, and that series wraps up here in Florida in 3 in St. Pete against the Rays. And I'll be honest, with the Rays losing Franco for a legitimate amount of time now, I think that's a get-right road trip where the Yankees can get away from the noise in New York, play 2 really bad West Coast teams, come back to Tampa, which is like a home game down south, and get right. And next thing you know, I think that could be just the steam they need to solidify the East so they don't have to keep looking over their shoulders. And that rolls right into the September call-ups.
Yeah, and everything's all about timing, and like you said, you're going to be getting some relief here. Stanton is scheduled to hopefully return on Thursday. That's a big bat coming back while you guys go to Oakland. You're going to need that. You guys pull off the win tomorrow. You get a day off, and then you have the Oakland series, then the Angels, and then the Rays. I mean, that's important where they can separate themselves again from the Rays and the Blue Jays.
You got to go
some breathing room.
In my opinion, they're supposed to do no worse than 6-3, 6-4 on the trip. I believe it's a 9-game road trip, but they shouldn't do any worse than 6-3, 6-4 on that road trip. It's either 9 or 10 games. But the point is that you're playing two really bad teams and a Rays team that is struggling to score runs.
Yeah, and if the Yankees come back and do not win the 6 games out of 9, even 5 out of 9, then I think you guys should still be a little worried.
I don't even know if worried's the right thing. If anything, more annoyed because they just got clubbed by the Jays. They were able to salvage yesterday. Tonight, nobody truly knew who was going to come in relief of Hermione. The belief was it might have been Clark Schmidt. That was not the case. Marinaccio did a great job. Hermione, were it not for a collision between Marwin Gonzalez. The thing was, I don't think they were able to hear each other. The place was deafening, but that cost them an extra run, because the Vogel home run wouldn't have been as substantial had that collision not occurred between Cabrera and Gonzalez. But they were able to respond quickly. I'm happy. I'm happy with, for 2 consecutive days, the Yankees look like the team that had the best record for the first half of the year in terms of finishing and playing complete games and winning close games. Because the Yankees hung their hat in the first half of the year on winning close games, and they just haven't been winning any games. But, I mean, even in close games, that record took a dip in the second half. They are now 5-14 in the second half. August to forget for them. But, September's around the corner. They're going to be getting help with some talented players that get an opportunity to play some games now. And I do believe that it's going to be the depth that the Yankees need to hold off whoever is behind them in the East, and also potentially see if they can maybe catch the Astros for best overall record in the dog days. I was kind of nervous tonight, and I'm like, man, I hope they don't put in Chapman. I kept having that ear because I saw that Chapman hadn't pitched in 2 days. I said, oh, shit, that bullpen budget might ask for a Chapman.
I missed the last 15 seconds of what you said. Sorry about that.
But the cool thing is the people that are watching did it.
They very, very well. No, to add on to what you were saying, as while you're saying this is an August to forget, good thing is there's still 9 days left in the month, and they can make it in August to remember. You did finally get your first winning streak of the month of August, your second one since the trade deadline. So, that's something to build on. And if the Yankees can go out, win another game tomorrow, and then, like you said, take 6 of 9 in their 9-game road series, I mean, that's a great way to finish off the month. So, I'm not going to say things are looking brighter, but you have to take the small positive things and build on them as you're waiting for help to return. And once you get your power hitting back, I think we're going to see a lot more of the first half Yankees that we haven't seen in a while.
I like that Benintendi's starting to get comfortable in that leadoff role. LeMahieu's still nursing an injury. That's why he was DHing today. But all in all, like I said, a good team win. And I really hope that Aaron Boone's little meltdown is going to get the response, since his little meltdown, the 2-0. So we'll see. And while we keep it on the theme of baseball for a moment, talking about Albert Pujols, the surefire first ballot Hall of Famer once his 5 years are up when he eventually retires, which more than likely is after this year. Needs 9 home runs to reach 700. Good friend of the show, Richie Dorney, basically just said, guys, Start grooving some pitches to this guy. Get him in there. I don't think he's going to make the 700 club unless if for some odd reason he chose to play maybe a little bit next year to try to reach that. But Albert doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would do that just to catch a record. But I'd like to see him reach it. It's just a big ask for a guy that is not the player he once was. But all things considered, has been a decent help when called upon for the Cardinals because he's not an everyday player anymore.
Right, and it's not 9 anymore. It's now 8 after today.
He did hit one today.
Yeah, he had the lone score for the Cardinals. So he is a little closer to the 700.
Thanks for telling me that.
But I
was so wrapped into the Yankee game that I literally just sometimes if the Yankees have a couple of runs lead, I might take a quick gander into what's going on elsewhere. But no, sir. Like I was locked into that game. I didn't miss a pitch of that game. I was making dinner, watching the game. It was exciting. But I'd like to see Pujols get this, and it's feasible. I just don't know if he will, but it's a possibility.
Are you ready for another boom?
Yeah.
So he's actually 7 home runs away.
Get the fuck out. He had another one today?
Yeah, he's been hot at the last few weeks. So we're talking about, I believe the Cardinals have 41 games left. 7 home runs in 41 games, I believe is doable. I think it's doable, and I believe he will do it. Now, is he going to come back and play 2, 3, 4 more seasons to go after Barry Bonds or Hank Aaron? No. I believe this is it. Even if he made it to 699, I don't think we're going to see a Mr. 700 type movie on Albert Pujols. I think he'll retire with 699 and carry on
happy
with his life.
And be happy because there's absolutely nothing that he has to prove. But I will say this, he's going to more than likely play in October and add on to an already incredible legacy.
Yeah, and it's one of those that as the Cardinals continue to get hotter and hotter, because going into the trade deadline, there were 3 games back of the Brewers. Now they're separating themselves from the Brewers. They're one of the hotter teams in baseball right now. Come October, you throw away those regular season stats and numbers, and it's all about who's playing hot baseball at that point. And it's very well that it could be the Cardinals in the World Series this year.
We always talk about pitchers. We don't always talk about catchers. But who's a better catcher to call a baseball game in October than Yadier Molina? I certainly will not count them out.
That's very true. So it's definitely
Ivan Hidalgo. Yeah, Pujols needs 7 more for the 700 home run club. Let me just post him up here real quick. How you doing? Thanks for tuning into our show tonight. I hope he gets it, Ivan. Or Ivan, I don't know how you pronounce it, sir. But, yeah, man, I definitely hope that he gets it. I think most baseball fans, regardless of allegiance, all have a very high opinion of Albert Pujols. He's always done things the right way. And this is what we call a segue. We're going about talking about doing things the right way to doing things this way. Kevin Durant to Memphis. We've heard other teams linked to him earlier a few weeks back. It was the Warriors. Other teams have had grumblings. Do you believe that KD can or will end up in Memphis with John Morant and the young nucleus that they have over there? Do you really think this is a thing, or do you think this is just – it wouldn't be the city that I would, in my brain, say, oh, he's going there because, OKC – he didn't last there when at the time he was one of the most popular players, more so because it wasn't the same kind of market as a LA or a New York or even a Seattle for that matter, because then originally the Sonics, drafted him. But what are your thoughts on this, man? Do you think this is something that could really happen, or do you think this is just another article in another day of the saga?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. I mean, the Grizzlies do have the draft equity. They have 5 first-round picks in the next coming years. So you put a package together with those 5 picks, throw in a Dylan Brooks, maybe a Desmond Maine or something like that, or Desmond Bain. I think it can happen. You know,
and obviously the draft capital
is the big one.
Because I'm saying if Ainge is asking for all that for Donovan Mitchell, I gotta think that if the Nets entertain it, they're going to ask for quite all.
Oh, I gotta believe that too.
Especially since they obliterated their future with draft picks, they got to get some of them back.
But we also got to remember one thing, that they're talking about trading him to a team in the Western Conference as opposed to the Eastern Conference. So usually that tends to lower the asking price.
I would say so. That's a good point. It's similar to other sports when you're trading out of the conference, or definitely in this case out of the division, because even with the Harden and Simmons trade, which went down this past year, it was weird in the sense that you're talking about two teams that are playoff bound and two teams that are in the same Atlantic division. So I did think that was very strange. You don't see it often. And when you do see it, it's normally lower tier players. Like, for instance, if the Red Sox and Yankees make a deal, very rarely are any of the players that substantial.
Yeah, it really is very rarely. And, you know, I'm actually very interested to see this trade if it actually goes down. It probably won't. But, you know, we're talking about Memphis, who was the number 2 seed last year in the Western Conference.
Hold on, Zap. I don't mean to interrupt you. Ivan from Rainforest, bro. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. How you doing, Ivan? Wow, this is awesome, bro. Brett told me he ran into you. Now I can tell it's him. Yeah, Brett told me he ran into you a few months back. You went to check him out at work. I hope you're well, man. I hope your family's doing really well. Give my regards to your family, bro. And I had no idea that you watched the show, and I'm really glad that you do, man. If you ever want to get on, by all means, you know, hit me up. It would be great to just catch up with you in general. Wow, that's crazy, man.
I know, Ivan, man. I remember Ivan as the guy that you couldn't ever get him to stop to say hello. Like, the guy was just go, go, go nonstop.
Yeah.
Ivan, how are you doing?
Wow. Literally the god of busing. I have never worked with another person that works like Ivan. Incredible dude and just a great person. But yeah, dude, I'm really happy you're watching the show, man. That's cool. That's really cool. And thank you. I appreciate all that. I hope your family's well, Ivan.
Going back to Memphis, I mean, you look at this team who, you know, they were, like I said, the number 2 seed last year in the Western Conference. They gave the Warriors a run for their money in the regular season. Then come playoff time, Memphis was up there with them until Ja Morant went down.
Yes.
If you throw a KD into that lineup, you're not talking about them now jumping up to be a top 3 team in the West. They're already there.
Mm-hmm.
They can quite possibly be the number 1 team.
They can challenge for the conference.
They could definitely challenge for the conference. And, you know, that's what KD brings. If KD goes to Memphis or a Phoenix, that puts them as the number 1 challenger to the Warriors to dethrone them next year. So, you know, I think it's a very interesting one. I think because it involves a Western Conference team, it's something to watch out for. But once again, you know, are the Brooklyn Nets going to ask for a complete ransom of draft picks and players to facilitate this trade, or are they going to lower their asking price? Time will tell. We'll see. I still think that they're not going to trade them. But, you know, I've been wrong before, and I've definitely been shocked before.
Yeah, dude. I wouldn't be blown away if they can jump the other teams in the West. I mean, obviously Golden State's a big ass because they have so much chemistry there. But you talk about storylines, you know, and you still have the Phoenix Suns, who are still very much right there. And they were right there the last 2 seasons. You know, they had a very forgettable blowout loss of how their season ended. Ivan, thank you so much, dude. Awesome, man. This is crazy, man. Yeah, awesome. I don't know if he's going to Memphis. I'm going to be honest with you. I think he's going to get traded during the season because I think the Nets are going to try to force their hand in keeping him in town, and I think things are going to get ugly, and then he's going to get dealt. I could be wrong, but that's how I think this plays out. And at that time, maybe Memphis may very well be the team that is involved. You know, that's a tough one to really forecast because I really don't know. I mean, and it's not that. I mean, you make the solid point about the interconference thing. You know, with the asking price potentially being a little lower because they don't have to deal with each other. But it's still Kevin Durant. And I can't imagine that Brooklyn is going to let him go easy. Or if Brooklyn wants to play the Warden kind of role, they might make it so ridiculous where he can't get traded because nobody's going to want to give up that kind of draft capital / player capital. So we'll have to see, man.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And, we spoke about this last night about call his bluff if you're Brooklyn. But at what point do you say, all right, we're losing no matter what? We're paying Kevin Durant.
It's like people that are getting divorced and if they're still in denial.
Yeah, very well. And I believe you bring up a very good point that it could be a midseason trade, a team that is right there needing a Kevin Durant to put him over the top.
Right.
Now, will it be Eastern Conference? I think the chances are more likely Western Conference as opposed to Eastern Conference, unless if a team like Miami can give Brooklyn the draft equity they want or the trade equity they want. Other than that, I just don't see anyone else in the Eastern Conference. I don't see Boston trading Tatum. I don't see them trading Jaylen Brown, especially if they're gelling real well, this upcoming season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure that before we get to October and the beginning of the NBA season, there's going to be a lot more of these stories popping up with KD because, he's a hot topic in general. As much as we like to give him a hard time, there's no denying that he's one of the greatest pure scorers in the history of the game. And, while we all have our opinions on how he does his business, the bottom line is he's a sought-after commodity because he's a great fucking basketball player. There's no denying that. I want to hit on this. I watched this replay very frequently after you brought to my attention that he was injured.
Sorry.
Hold on, Richie.
Is that your garage?
That was a laser that just got turned on.
That was really a laser.
Yeah.
So it sounded like what I thought it was. Okay, Kayvon Thibodeaux, the injury update. Initially, it was scary because I believe that we all thought that it could have been a season-ending injury. I was actually on my way from work, and you told me what was happening with that. Very scary injury. Fortunately, it's just a sprain where it's not any kind of structural damage or tear to the knee. But I will say this, man. I'm concerned in terms of the immediacy of how the Giants start the season because this is a guy that they're going to be depending on. It gives Roche an opportunity to get into that rotation and hopefully help out Azeez Ojulari, who's coming off a very good rookie year. But more so than what it does to the team in the immediate future, in my personal opinion, if all goes well, I think Kayvon has at least a 50-50 shot to suit up for week 3 against Dallas at home. It's a Monday game. You get the extra day. But more so the hit. Preseason game, super deliberate. And I'm not saying this because I'm a Giants fan. I'm saying this because it was Bush League. I'm not pleased with what I saw in a game that, number one, doesn't matter. They all matter because guys are trying to make teams. But the point I'm making is I thought it was with bad intentions, and I thought the guy took liberties to try to hurt this kid. And I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, oh, man, it's such a hard one because I agree with you. But at the same time, everything about it was legal. And it's something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. That's where I'm going. Because just because something's legal, there's still a right and a wrong and a wrong way to do things. Like, headhunting didn't really get checked until they started hurting their pockets. Because a lot of dudes are like, 15 yards? I'll knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just wasn't happy, man. I was not pleased with that. And believe me, if it was one of my guys and it happened on the other side, I would probably be talking the same way right now. Because
absolutely.
There's no place in the game for that kind of shit. And while, to your point, he wasn't penalized, it does push the envelope. And while we're on the subject of injuries, my New York Giants, as well as the tenants, the New York Jets, they play on that synthetic field turf. And, a lot of players have come out and said that they are not fans of that versus natural grass. Now, natural grass is more upkeep, especially when you have two teams sharing the stadium. But I do think that there is a legitimate correlation between this and the Giants over the course of the better part of five and a half or so years, always being amongst the league leaders in players lost to injury. And I do think there's something to say about that. And at what point is the collective bargaining agreement going to go back to the table, the Players Association and the CBA, and maybe come to a universal agreement that, it has to be the same. Natural grass, man. Natural grass. Because like in the old days, you think about how many careers were ended on the old school AstroTurf. Like you take stadiums like the Vet, stadiums like the old Giant Stadium. I mean, hell, even New York Cowboys in the 90s played on turf. The only team that played on natural grass during that era was the Redskins. Mm-hmm. These are guys that, sometimes no matter what the potential calls for in your career, you get one really good contract. Sometimes guys do better than that. You take a Von Miller, other generational talents. But the point I'm making is you're on a rookie deal. You don't have any guarantees of where it's going to go. He could be Lawrence Taylor somewhere like that, or he could be LeVar Arrington, or he could be anywhere in between. He could be Corey Miller. We don't know.
Corey Miller. Wow.
Yeah, I said it. Yeah, 57. But I just don't like to see that shit. I saw the play. I was pissed. And while to your point, it's not illegal, I still see it as really trying to take the guy's knee. And that has to be addressed because one thing that I'm not a fan of in today's NFL, the way they look at injuries, the way they look at poor, dirty play, it seems like they act like defensive players don't have a brain. Because I've seen offensive players lower their heads and put the boom down on defensive players, but it's not the same ramifications as if a defensive player did it to an offensive player. It's the same shit. But, it's a quarterback-driven league. They're the guys who sell the most jerseys and are in the most commercials, and I understand that it's an offensive-driven league all the way around. I get it. But I do see that in addition to playing handicapped on defense in a lot of ways, there's certain things that defenders cannot do anymore. I also think that one of the hardest things to do is when you're going at full speed is to kind of lighten how you're coming down on a player. Because my father taught me a long time ago, and other coaches as well, that if you're playing not to get hurt, you're gonna get hurt. That's not a sport that's based on half speed. This, and I know this. And it really there's so many layers and ways to go with this. But the point to be made is, as a Giant fan and as a fan of football, I'm happy that this kid's probably going to be back in the month of September. He won't miss too much time. And we lost another player. Darian Beavers today tore his Achilles. That's a stinger. He was a middle round draft pick and a player that I was excited about seeing. And now we're gonna have to wait a year for his first real action. He misses his rookie year. But the NFL, I want them looking into this field turf stuff because I'm tired of seeing guys get hurt because, they're being reckless. Like you got to put them on the safest surface possible. And if guys are getting hurt because of the turf, it's just not right. You came up with this idea, and I got to say, I think it's a great one. From worst to first, who can make a 360 in the NFL after a 2021 last place finish? I'm going to eliminate the teams that aren't going to do it and three logical ones that maybe could. And you tell me if you agree or not. The Seahawks. No way. No way. They're staying in the basement. And not so much staying in the basement, they can't win that division. Jacksonville Jaguars. No. They're not winning the South. Chicago Bears? No, excuse me, the Detroit Lions. Because we already have the Bears in last this year. They'll be improved, but they're not jumping Minnesota and Green Bay. No way. My New York Giants. It's feasible because of the fact that the NFC East is always like throwing dice on the floor. I would say that they're an outside chance. But I'll be honest, no, not this year. I think the Baltimore Ravens, even though I don't believe they're even making the playoffs this year, I would say just based on recent history and based on the culture in that division, I would say that they are the most likely, if anyone, to do a last to first finish. But my genuine opinion is that I don't believe anybody that finished last in their division in 2021 is winning their division in 2022. I do not see it happening with anyone. That is my answer on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
the Denver Broncos are an intriguing one, but when you look at who they got to play, if they were in a different division, I'd feel better, but no.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say about Denver, even Seattle. Well, I think Seattle's going to be a fairly competitive team this year. It's the fact that they have Drew Lock starting at quarterback for me that's going to lose them games. I mean, they're going to rely a lot on Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker. Their defense is going to be improved, but they just don't have that quarterback that's going to get them over the top, And then as far as Denver, for me, while you would think acquiring a Russell Wilson would put you in the running to finish first in your division, they play in the toughest division in football. And while they made improvements, so did everyone else, with the exception of the Chiefs, but they still have Patrick Mahomes.
And the thing with the Chiefs that people tend to overlook, sorry for interrupting you, you got Josh McDaniels, who failed in his first time as a head coach. He's now with the Raiders. Great OC, and I think he's going to do much better this time around than he did last time. That's my personal opinion. You also have the coaching situation in Denver, which does not line up to Andy Reid, nor does Josh McDaniels. And Andy Reid is by far the best coach in that division, is the point I'm going for. He's a future Hall of Fame coach. And yes, that does matter. I have mixed feelings on how good Eric Bieniemy is because he has certain duties where he's limited, whereas a lot of casuals just give him all the credit for anything that Kansas City does on offense. And part of the reason why he hasn't been hired yet for a head coach, and I'm not saying he's not qualified, I think he actually is, or at least, worth a look, is because the Chiefs are always playing deep into the playoffs. And, a lot of these coaching vacancies are already filled.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the biggest reasons, but I think the other reason, too, that people are not really considering is he's got the credentials. He should be a head coach in the NFL. But apparently he's a horrible guy at doing interviews. And
really?
Yeah, and the interview process, if you can't complete an interview, that's going to squash everything. And so that's the biggest one.
That's interesting.
Why year in and year out, why many NFL fans are sitting here saying, why isn't Eric Bieniemy the head coach? Why isn't he the head coach? Yes, the Chiefs are deep in the playoffs. I mean, they've been in the AFC Championship game the last 4 years. They lost to the Patriots, then made it to 2 Super Bowls in a row.
4 years.
So yes, that is a solid point. However, NFL teams do have the right to request an interview, and of course, Andy Reid and the Chiefs can approve or deny. But because it is to promote within and not for the same position, you won't ever see that get denied.
Now, let me ask you this. Andy Reid is no spring chicken. Do you think there's a possibility similar to how we identified what could happen with Flores in Pittsburgh should Tomlin eventually hang it up? Because Tomlin's a young dude still, but Tomlin started young. And coaching is a really tough job. So do you think that possibly Bieniemy would replace Reid, and maybe that might be KC's plan behind the closed doors? Well, you don't have to interview. Well, maybe you still have interviews internally, but when they want you, they want you. You know what I'm saying? Because for years, I thought that McDaniels was going to hang around and wait for Belichick to finally retire. Because, he failed in Denver. He came back. Now he's back in the West with the Raiders. And yes, I do think he's going to do much better than he did the last time. I don't know. I mean, the Belichick underlings have not done all that well. And oddly enough, Flores, who got canned in Miami, was one of the more successful ones.
Yeah, I would want to say, yeah, that sounds like a good, solid plan. But Andy Reid he hit the jackpot with Patrick Mahomes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely could help lengthen a career of a coach. Oh my God, you have the best exactly frozen face right now. I think Zappy might be gone for the evening. It looks like I hear him. Do I see him? Okay, there he is. No, you had the best face for a moment. I'm not going to say what it looked like was happening because that's not good. But at any rate, no, Andy Reid is a phenomenal head coach, dude. There's no denying this. And I actually think, had he won that Super Bowl against Arians, the whole narrative about him not being able to win certain big games would have already changed. But being a Giant fan and dealing with Andy Reid for so many years in that regard, I know how good of a coach that man is. I mean, he got Philly close many times. He finally sealed the deal with the Chiefs. And he's a damn good coach. He's coached in 3 Super Bowls with 2 different organizations.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't believe he's the head coach in waiting for the Chiefs, honestly. When you land a Patrick Mahomes, it brought and made Andy Reid younger as well.
Yes.
So it's just one of those. If this was a Bruce Arians, Tom Brady situation, having a Brian Leftwich in waiting type thing.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah, when Mahomes is about to retire, then yeah, I can see it. I can absolutely see it. But no, in this case right here, Andy Reid's only 64 years old. He's still
that's what made that's what made the Buccaneers situation interesting, because I would have thought off the top of my brain that with Arians retiring for quite a few reasons, he and Brady aren't exactly besties. I know that that had a little to do with this. The point is they went with their DC to be their new head coach, where I thought Leftwich was for sure getting the gig. And that was a little shocking. And I think Todd Bowles was more than deserving of a second opportunity, because I feel that the Jets did him dirty. I don't think they were that patient with him. And I saw them more patient with other lesser coaches, like even an Adam Gase, who was a horrible, horrible hire. And, I mean, they've had some other really bad coaches over the years, the Jets have. And Todd Bowles is a good coach. And, when you have Tom Brady and you have Mike Evans and you have that defense, yeah. And, we kind of veered off this a little bit, but I kind of told you what I think rather briefly. But do you think there's a last place team that realistically can do the 360 from the bottom to the top? I don't, based on who finished last year and also based on who's in those particular divisions.
So there's a couple teams that come to mind. I'm going to eliminate the Jets already. I'm going to eliminate the Broncos simply because they play in the AFC West.
Yeah.
Baltimore makes the most sense.
I would have to think.
Because, I mean, we think about it. Baltimore last year was a Super Bowl contending team before the season even started.
Yeah.
And then they suffered an array of injuries to their running back position, their defensive backfield.
And then Lamar got dinged up.
This is a team that started off 8-2, and then they just fell.
Yeah, they nosedived. They nosedived really hard. And I think a lot of people thought that was going to happen to the Bengals. Well, it kind of did. I mean, the Bengals limped into the playoffs, but then they got hot.
Yeah, the Baltimore, I think, is the team that has the best opportunity to do it because they have a winning tradition there. Their whole team knows how to win. They get J.K. Dobbins back. They get Gus Edwards back. They get Marcus Peters back. They drafted Kyle Hamilton. They added good pieces. But my biggest thing with Baltimore is they don't have receivers. We alluded to that on the North Show, that Lamar has never had a true number one receiver, and that is going to play dividends in part of how far can he really go, because I'm not trying to say that Lamar can't win without a number one receiver, but he hasn't yet. And there's a lot of variables and a lot of layers to what makes or what defines a number one receiver. Devontae Adams was a number one receiver for years in Green Bay. And to kind of make a lesser point, but a similar point, that there's a lot of different criteria on what a number one receiver is, Amani Toomer for many years was the number one receiver with the New York Football Giants.
And completely different players, completely different skill sets. The point to be made is Lamar's never had an Amani Toomer or in between to a Devontae Adams. And no knock on Hollywood Brown, but he's not that guy. And you did make a point on that North show about maybe OBJ making sense. I believe the guy I named for Baltimore that makes sense is Brandon Cooks. OBJ is currently a free agent. Brandon Cooks is currently on a horrific football team. So I would say keep your eyes peeled on those two particular guys, and maybe that can change the narrative on who can. New York Giants 2 years ago in the pandemic year were only 6-10, but going into the final week of the season had an opportunity to win the NFC East. And they would have won the NFC East at a 6-10 record. Now, I want people to take into consideration our division was historically bad. Last year, your Cowboys brought a little credibility back to the division, having the year they did. And even though I don't think Philly was all that good, they did get in the playoffs last year. So, no, not saying that my Giants can't win 9 games, but realistically, taking the fan hat off, I think it could be more like 7. And, it hasn't started off too rosy, losing our number 5 overall pick, first pick in our draft, Kayvon Thibodeaux. It's a few games. It's not going to be the end of the world. But, if we were primed to win a Super Bowl this year and we lost that kid for a month, yeah, I'd be a little more upset. I just want him to get healthy. This is a marathon, not a sprint for the Giants getting back to where they need to be. But I want to make a mention of this to you before we get out of here. I saw a really interesting stat on Josh Allen and my guy Daniel Jones through the first 38 games of their career. The common denominator is that they both worked with Brian Daboll. Well, Jones is in the process of working with Daboll. The numbers were staggeringly deadlocked, with the exception of course, wins and losses, which Josh Allen has a substantial advantage on Daniel Jones. But as a Giant fan, I just want to say this quickly and briefly. Seeing this statistic and seeing other statistics that even Jones and Eli are very similar in, given the pace of their careers, that time of their careers. Do I think Jones is the guy? What does my gut tell me? No, I'm not sure. That's what I really don't know. But what I do know is that we're going to find out this year. And I think it's important to find out because one way or the other, either your thing is going to be true. They're going to give him a short-term deal at the end of the year. Or they're going to let him walk. Taylor's your stopgap. And the next Giants quarterback is going to be a next year's draft for the future. But, to his defense, and I've said this on many times on different shows, when you have 4 OCs and 3 head coaches in 3 short years, it is hard to get better and to know who you are as a football player.
And that was the point I was going to make about the Giants. To me, there's still too many question marks for that team.
Yeah, they're not a complete team yet, and I accept that.
They're not a complete team. And, you also got to take into consideration that ever since his rookie season, Saquon Barkley hasn't been able to stay healthy. Then you have the question marks with Kadarius Toney.
Yeah,
and there's just
then Galladay making people question if that was a real, just boneheaded signing. And in the immediate, I'm going to say yes, but the positive part about that contract is that a lot of when people look at the $70 million, they don't necessarily look at all the incentives and all the ways the contract works. A lot of that shit is escalator money. So there is a distinct possibility that at year's end, the Giants can cut losses with Kenny Galladay and not get tagged all that terribly. Or Galladay could have a year, which I hope he does, because he was a really good player with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, they're like that. That's why we're playing the what if game with New York. A
lot of what ifs. But the cool thing about the season coming is that those questions are going to be answered rather quickly. I will say this: I'm happy that they finally reinvested in the offensive line. It looks like they finally are going in the right direction. Because I'm not used to looking at a Giants roster and saying, oh, shit. Not only do we have a decent-looking O-line, we actually have backups that could come in and start, and I wouldn't be too terribly upset if they were in there. Jones finally gets a modern offense. He finally gets innovative thinkers that run the offense. And we get one of the most accomplished defensive coordinators in recent history in the NFL in Wink Martindale. It's not going to work overnight. It's not going to happen right away. But I do believe that for the first time in a long time, the future of the New York Giants is rather bright.
I'm not going to say too much about him just because we still have to do our East show. But
yeah, for sure. I kind of rambled on a tangent because, truth be told, we already finished our topics.
I was going to say the one team I believe that could have a chance to winning the division when you put aside the Broncos, you put aside the Seahawks. If Doug Peterson was there a year ago and this was his second season going in with Jacksonville,
I feel a little better because they have a good defense.
They have a good defense. I look at the Lions. I have the Vikings winning that division, but you still have to take into consideration that Aaron Rodgers is still there. So
dude. No, it's too much of an ask.
I think the one team that a lot of people are not really talking about just
Carolina Panthers.
It's the Carolina Panthers. And really, I mean, this is a team that has a top-tier defense, the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL last season.
And when healthy, arguably the most talented running back in the league.
Exactly. And like I said the other day, I think CMC coming back, but having Hubbard there to kind of take some of the carries away from him and conserve it for the season, that helps him. Baker Mayfield is the big question. He was one of those players that needed a change. And I want to say he goes into a good situation, but at the same time, a bad situation. So, time will tell, but I think the Panthers are a team to watch out for because right now the Buccaneers, while there are a lot of people Super Bowl pick, including
myself,
a
lot more vulnerable right now.
They're a lot more vulnerable right now. And then this whole, he went to the Bahamas or wherever he went, Tom Brady, but, his weapons are not there right now. And then when you lose one offensive guard to free agency, you lose your center to a season-ending injury, your another guard to a season-ending injury, another guard to an injury. They're just getting depleted.
And not to mention that you have Sue and JPP who are free agents that it doesn't look like either one of them at the moment are invited back. You lost Ronald Jones, who was a change of pace guy for Leonard Fournette. But Gronkowski's the big one, losing him to retirement. Yeah, you replace him with Julio Jones. When I say replace him, I mean a person who's credible enough to catch some of the passes that Gronk will not catch now because he ain't going to catch them on his couch. Russell Gage, I don't know. Godwin's often injured. Mike Evans is a beast. But they're vulnerable. That's the point. And you got to take into consideration that if the O-line is banged up, Tom Brady is not exactly Captain Mobility.
He's not, and if you can get pressure up the middle on him, it's never been a matter of getting pressure from the outside because he's got such a quick release. It's if you can get a pressure up the middle on that guy and disturb him.
Yes,
it's a whole different ballgame. I firmly believe they should
go
go out there.
Got a good defense, dude, and they have won 4 of the last 5 games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Unfortunately, the one they lost was a game that was an elimination game. But, they won 4 out of 5 with a litany of different quarterbacks.
Yeah. And I personally think what would help the Bucs is they get on the phone and call J.C. Tretter's agent and get him into Tampa because he's still out there.
They need to figure something out.
They do.
Because right now, they're vulnerable, like I said. And it's a long season. And Brady, one thing I'll give him credit for, even if you look at last year when his receiving corps was dealing with injuries and AB was dealing with his issues and he left the team, Brady still adapted. And while some of it was hard to watch, they were able to come back in that Ram game. And were it not,
sorry, that time was a sander.
So good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I believe the Panthers are the one team to watch out for. I believe that's the only team. The Saints, you still have questions. Can Jameis stay healthy? Are we going to get a 30 for 30 Jameis? Or are we going to get a Jameis that we saw last year that looked much better? Mike Thomas is coming back, but he hasn't played ball in a while. So the Saints are another question mark. So, there's just things to watch. But, I tend to fully agree with you that I don't believe there's going to be a team that finished in last that will finish in first place this year.
I mean, it's not in the cards. And, like I said, based on just recent history, that's the only reason why I could even consider throwing Baltimore's name in that hat. And it's because I have mentioned how I do think I'll put it to you like this. If the Browns technically were the last place team, even though they had the same record as the Ravens, they were technically the third place team. If the Browns were the last place team and it wasn't the Ravens, I would probably drive that one home and be like, I think they could. But the reality is nobody's going to do it this year. And if I'm wrong and if you're wrong, then we'll be wrong. And we're going to have some shit to talk about if and when it does happen. Oh, shit. Jordan Patrick. I like this. Yeah. I could see that.
Absolutely.
He's
a sleeper.
Oh, yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
He's looked fantastic in camp. He's looked great in preseason games. The catch he had this past weekend was a nice one. I mean, Chris Olave, I believe, is going to be a great receiver in the NFL. And I believe he's the replacement, if I may say, to Mike Thomas. It's going to make trading Mike Thomas that much easier, or even just outright releasing him.
Well, yeah, Thomas hasn't been right for the better part of 2 years with the injuries. And he also was at odds with the organization because they were very angry that he prolonged his surgery. Ivan, who commented earlier today, I think this will be a good way to just drive home the show and finish it here. KD's going to have to work out in Brooklyn. He's under contract. Sean Marks is not going to give him that easy problem. It's Kyrie Irving's immaturity of not showing up to work and not leaving KD. Yeah. And while I agree with pretty much everything Ivan said, I don't completely look at leaving KD hanging because it's like anything else. When you're a mercenary and you're begging your organization to bring in like-minded mercenaries, you're going to get burned just as often as you burn the others. So it's not that easy for me to be like, oh, KD's the victim in this situation. Quite frankly, I think you got multiple players with, just bad track records of not exactly sticking to their words. And Harden, KD, and Durant, I mean, it was one of the hardest rosters for me to get behind guys and root for, and I wouldn't anyway because I'm a Knicks fan. Brett got pissed off in the last podcast about the Patriots when he told him it was a toss-up game against the Jets. I was dying laughing. But that's awesome. Oh, Ivan, I'm blown away, dude. I had no idea that you watched the show, man, but it makes me happy that you do. Big shout out also to my former partner here at the original podcast, Jordan Patrick Show. He's being overlooked. Going ham at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, Jordan. I see that, dude. I do see that. And the thing is, like Zappy said it, and it was a great segue even with what you're saying right now, Jordan, is that, I'm kind of surprised that I'm actually saying this, but I think the two biggest things that the Saints season hinges on is Alvin Kamara avoiding suspension, which more and more looks like that's going to be the case. Him returning to top 5 to top 7 running back form. And you need Jameis to be more of what he was last year before the injury and not that 30-30 guy like Zapp said while he was still a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it's interesting. There's a lot of question marks with certain teams and certain players that have been in the league for a while. I don't know, dude. It's going to be a really exciting offseason that continues to grow with some of these basketball storylines. And as far as football goes, I think this is the beginning of a different era where it's going to really be put on full display of the changing of the guard with a lot of things. Because I told Brett for so long that if Brady hangs out for too long,
It's Rappaport.
I got to give you a quick backstory on this, Zap. So Jordan and I, we did a show about a year ago or so, if I had to guess. And you remember the controversy between Rappaport and KD?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jordan was Team KD. I was Team Rappaport, and I think I was playing the role of troll. But I also am a Michael Rappaport fan because I'm a New Yorker through and through, and I love Michael Rappaport's ability to get under the skin of a guy like, Durant being so sensitive. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I was quoted as saying that Michael Rappaport is like the white Spike Lee.
That's exactly what he is. I've referred to him as that as well, and that's before even here.
Yeah, the Gringo Mandingo, formerly Superboy of Copland. Man, oh man, he even played an equal fan in that Patton Oswalt movie, big fan, about the crazy Giants fan. I don't know if you ever saw that, but it's actually a pretty good watch.
I just think of him in Higher Learning.
Oh shit! Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Yeah, Rappaport could play a lot of roles. More recently, he was on Netflix with the Atypical show. But at any rate, just the fact that he's sticking it to KD every chance he gets, I mean, that's cooled down now, but that shit was pretty thick at the time. And, anytime that I see KD unraveling and just showing how sensitive he is, quite frankly, it's a good day. Until next time, I'm Richie. He's Zappy. Big shout out to my friends Ivan and Jordan for joining us tonight. It was really amazing. I'm blown away with Ivan. I had no idea he was a fan, and I always remember Ivan. The only time that he would talk, was literally when he clocked out. He was that serious about his money. But I'll tell you the truth, man. He was always up to talk sports, like as soon as the night was over, and knowing that, he's watching the show is pretty sick.
Sorry, I just saw what Jordan said right now. I believe Russell Wilson, will he have a big year? I mean, he went from having DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, to having Jerry Jeudy, lost Tim Patrick, but has Cortland Sutton and KJ Hamler. He does have two very good running backs in Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, which is going to take a lot of the ease away from him.
And even at tight end. In my opinion, his new tight end is an upgrade over Noah Fant.
Yeah, so I could seriously see Russell being a good quarterback that's going to throw for 4,400 yards, maybe 33 to 35 touchdowns. And then, and he's got a good offensive line. My thing with the Broncos is I don't trust their defense. I don't trust their defense right now because Bradley Chubb,
it's the linebackers. It's the linebackers.
Yeah,
that secondary can play with anybody.
Yeah, it's the linebacker. But in a 3-4 defense, your linebackers are very, very important. And we're talking about both Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, because those. It's weird, man. It's weird. How the Jerry Jeudy thing. We don't know for sure how that's gonna happen. Top 5 fantasy quarterback in the last 3 years. That is factual, Jordan. This particular year, I don't think that he's going to hit that top 5 stature. I'm thinking more like top 10 or outside looking in the top 10 because you got to think that Carr, even though he's not on the level of a Russell Wilson, from a statistical level, I could see him up in his stats to, a little more prominence in fantasy. I'm actually freezing him as my backup in John's league. Aaron Rodgers, even though it's going to be a year off his standards, always has to be considered. Then you got the faces that you expect. You got the Bradys, you got the Allens. Lamar could have an off year. He could also have a really awesome year. It really hinges on if they can run the ball efficiently and if Lamar and Andrews can continue to make that magic happen. And if some of Lamar's other receivers can finally mature and get to that level of serving as the number ones. We got 30 seconds, Zap. Anything you want to say on the way out?
No, just, hey, college football's back this weekend. So finally.
Yeah.
That's, I'm happy about that.
And I'm off Saturday, and I got one of my fantasy drafts out in Independence. I'm actually going to be with John that day. And then, of course, Cheddar and the Sun the week after that. My buddy Zach has another one that I'm going to be in, and of course, my buddy Gilly. Until next time, we are out. Thank you so much for watching.